So, welcome back. It's MDEV1001. That's Mobile Data Management in the summer 2023 semester at Georgian. And it's week 6, part 1 of our broadcast and recording. And welcome for those people who are here. I see that people have come alive again and come out of their holes at home or wherever they were to come out and play together with us in the playground that we call Georgian College campus. Right, we see some people here, which is really good. I'm happy about that. We see a couple people online, and there's plenty of people online that are missing today. Normally, I would expect another 15 to 20 of you, right, in this crazy class that we're in. But I'm happy with the people that we have in class today. That's great because, again, we can do more together, and I can answer more when we're together. This week, we're sitting at week 6, like I said, June 14th, the week of June 14th for you guys. And we're kind of rounding out our the first half of semester. And a couple of things are happening right now that I want to talk about. So today is all about authentication. I'll talk a little bit about authentication with some theory, very minor, few slides. Okay, I promise. I'll try and keep the slides low. And last week what we did was we talked about full CRUD operations, and we created a simple interface with iOS. I asked you guys, this is actually say week 5, not week 6, ICE 5, week 5. You guys did a little simple interface, and I always ask you to do your own stuff. I say outside of class, do the Android side, okay? And some of you find that easy. Some of you don't find that easy at all, right? Especially it's time consuming, but it is worth 4% of your final grade. So again, guys, please remember to get that done, all right? So when I ask you to do something on your own, the in-class exercises that I've marked so far, they were easy ones. Now we're getting into the meat of how they work. And so, you have to do some of the stuff on your own. And usually you have until the Sunday of the same week, which is what's happening this week as well. Okay, so that's what we did last time. We got together, did full CRUD, and we gave you a very simple application in iOS. You did your Android stuff. This week, we're talking about authentication. And how do we incorporate yet another entity in iOS? So if I was going to make a second entity, last time we made one, right, which was the movie entity. Now we're making another one. How does it work with two, right? Does it make any difference? And is there a relationship between users and movies? Right now there isn't, but there could be, right? And there could be in that maybe everyone has, if I had multiple users logging into the same app, what if they had their own movie list, right? And they only want to see their movie list, not everyone else's. But you want to keep track of everyone's movie list in one database. How do you do that, right? This is where you can do relationships. We're not doing the relationships today. We're actually just doing, let's put the users into place, okay? Because that's something that we want to do. And so I kind of take this approach where we do, I don't know, like I kind of, the same way when we role play, and now I'm digressing. When I get together with my friends and we play Dungeons and Dragons, or we play some other kind of game, right? We build things organically, which means we work one week at a time, and then we build, and then suddenly we have a really cool campaign, right? It doesn't happen overnight. It happens over time, okay? And for us, in the real world, it's years, right? For you guys, it's weeks, okay? So it's kind of like a compressed schedule. Same thing that when we talk about our project management class, it's a simulation. Usually when we build a mobile app, it's 12 to 18 months, that we try and get something out, okay? We try and get it done as soon as possible. 12 months would be optimal, right? Realistically, though, there's so many moving parts a lot of times. Unless you have a really great plan and a super, committed team, it takes time. It takes a lot more time than you think. So on that, then this week, what we're doing is we're doing 2 new view controllers or screens. Now, one thing I've been doing as a strategy to get things done quicker is I've been giving you these gists, which are little, kind of snippets of code that we put into our application. Positives and negatives about this, okay? Positive, get things done faster. Negative, we're not building things from scratch. The reason why it's negative is because, well, if we were building things from scratch, we could play around a little bit, but it would also take twice as long, right? So I'm building something here that I might be building in another, scenario. That might take me 3 weeks, 4 weeks. I'm doing it in 1 week, right? Why? Because we need to get stuff done. And also the other scenario, the context that we're working within is You have a full iOS class and you have a full Android class, and those professors, that professor, is supposed to do all the other stuff that I'm not talking about, right? Which is, and there's going to be stuff I'm like, I can't talk about this because this class is not a whatever class. In this case, this week it's going to be like, this is the talk I'm going to say. This class, I can't do that because this class is not a security class. I'm going to talk about security, but I can't do a full security example. No time, right? The other people have to do that. That other professor who's doing iOS, maybe he's going to do security with you. I don't know. I don't have time for that. So, but I will talk about it because we need to. So on that, because we're talking about app authentication, local data security, and data permissions, we are building an app today again with iOS. You will be building out your Android app yourself. But I also have to talk about a couple things. The elephant in the room, which is next week. What the heck is happening with our 20% test that's going on next week, right? That's coming. And what I did for my other class that I have on Mondays is what I'm going to do with you, which is next week, we are not getting together physically. Nope. I am not going to watch over your shoulder to see if you're going to do your test properly. Nope. I don't play it that way. Tommy don't play that way, is what I'm going to say, right? What Tommy does is this. I'm going to give you your test on Monday next week. I'm going to open it up, right? First thing in the morning on Monday, you're going to see your test awake and alive and ready to play with you, right? You're going to open up your test, download it, whatever, if there's something to download, read through it and start. And you'll have until Friday of next week to get it done. Monday to Friday. The test will be measured for 3 hours. That's what it's going to be, max. So you should be able to finish the test in 3 hours. Many of you will choose to procrastinate and wait till Friday to start it. I don't recommend that, right? We will get together still on next Wednesday during the same time period, 4 to 7, online, synchronous. Okay, I'll be here online synchronous to help you, support you. I will go over the test and answer any questions you have from the parts that you've done. If you don't need me and you finish your test off, don't have to attend. I will still record a session. I will still give you the details about what the test is about and go through the details with you. But next week, you do not physically have to be here in person. We will still do an or synchronous online, right? Because again, it's you doing your test on your own. The test is individual. Okay, you're not supposed to talk to anybody else about it. I'm not going to run, something like some kind of security protocol and whatever to stop you from collaborating, but it's supposed to be a lone test, a solo test, a test that you do by yourself without talking to others, which means to keep you all on the up and up, I'm going to get you to do a video, right? No video, 0 marks. No, and I'm not going to have any tolerance for that. So, Professor, I'm so sorry, but I had networking problems on Friday and I couldn't get my test done. 0, 20% down the drain. So make sure you get it done. Make sure you fix everything you need to fix. Understand everything that you need to understand for this week, because next week, no tolerance, right? You've had 6 weeks to fix your GitHub problems, video problems, networking problems, YouTube issues, problems with your Mac or your Windows machine. You've had 6 weeks. Next week, there's no tolerance for I don't know how to do GitHub. I can't do YouTube. I don't know how. No. The expectation is by next week, you know exactly how to do everything. All right? Which is why I give you the whole week to figure it out, just in case you don't know everything. And also, I'm meeting with some students, this week for people who have issues with GitHub to resolve those problems. I want to resolve those problems with you guys, coming up next week. What I may do for also as another wrinkle is there might be something that says something like this: even student numbers, you do this task. Odd student numbers, you do this task, right? Which again will make it a little bit more challenging, but not impossible to cheat with other people, because people will do whatever they have to do, right? Again, but there's ways I can figure it out, okay? There's ways I can figure it out, guys. So please do your own work. Sometimes we spend more time trying to cheat than actually do the work, right? So let's just get that done. So what am I going to test? Because we've already done everything here that we've done. Today I'm going to do authentication. We've already done full CRUD. We've done an iOS interface. I'm getting you to do that iOS and Android or picking one anyway with your assignment 2. I mean, what am I going to test, right? Because I've done everything. I've tested everything. Well, guess what? The test is going to be eerily similar to what we've already done, except there's going to be a different data set that you're going to have to put together, which means different models, different ways of doing stuff, maybe a different user interface, something else. But there's going to be very similar things that you can reuse. If you've done your homework and you've attended class and you've done your in-class exercises, the test will be stupid easy. If you haven't done those things and you've been cheating, the test is going to be impossible. All right? That's what it's going to be like next week. All right, so I'm just telling you in advance. No one's going to look over your shoulder. I'm not going to time you. None of that stuff is going to happen. But it's going to be basically you're going to get the test on Monday, and you'll have until Friday to get it done. And you shouldn't have any questions. And I mean that as in like you shouldn't, right? But things happen. Maybe I'm going to give you something, it doesn't work. Right then, I'll fix it, right, if we have to do it. So Monday morning, you'll expect 8 o'clock in the morning. I should have your test or thereabouts. Your test should be released, and you'll have all week to get it done. Right, so it's your time. You figure it out the way you like. That's how it's going to be. I will post an announcement on Sunday, right? That's going to say something like, "Stay home," right? Don't come in on Wednesday. Stay home, do your tests, work on it, and I'll meet with you at the same bat time and same bat channel. I'll meet with you on Wednesday if you have any questions, right? But the test is absolutely due on Friday. No exceptions. Anyone who's late, 0. For whatever reason, right? Because you've had all week, right? So here's my strategy if I was you. If I was a student, what would I do? If my professor spoke this way, first of all, I would not be afraid because you guys are all perfect, right? You're going to know how to do your test. You've already done your assignments and in-class exercises. So really, there is nothing for you to be afraid of because I'm not going to trick you. It's just the same stuff with a different data set. I'm telling you what the test is going to be right now. I'm going to give you a different data set. You're going to figure it out, right? And that's one thing that's going to happen. I may provide the data for you, which means you won't have a choice. It's not going to be something like you make up this data. I'm going to say, no, here's the data. You figure it out, how to put together the stuff. But again, who cares? It doesn't matter what data I give you. The concept is the exact same. So there shouldn't be a panic about this kind of stuff. If you've done your homework, that's the proviso. If you've done your own homework. If you haven't done your own homework, yeah, I'm sure there's panic that's going to take over, right? And where it can really take over if I do something like this, I give you different data sets. Example, your student number ends in a 02, you get a data set. Your student number ends in a 03, you get another data set. 04, you get another data set, right? That can be really challenging because then you can't go to your partner and go, what are you doing? I'm doing this one. Oh crap, I got to find someone who's doing the other one to cheat, right? Don't cheat, guys. So that's the thing. You're going to get a different data set. You have to do it in Android and iOS? Chances are you'll have a choice, either one or the other. There is no choice of doing it with a hybrid. There is no React Native. You have to do native applications. And I've been focusing on that this semester for your in-class exercises and your assignments because you have a whole class on hybrid, all right? Has nothing to do with me. Remember that thing is like, this has nothing to do with me. These other people are taking care of that. That's for this class too, okay? So that's the small advice I have for you on next week. Get it done by Thursday. Target Thursday as the day to get it done, or even earlier, Wednesday, right? And then you'll be fine. You won't have to panic because there might have other stuff that's due next week too. Maybe there's other things you have happening next week. I don't know, right? Chances are you will. And then we're off for a whole week. So if you look at our schedule, this is the admin part that I was talking about. We're off for a whole week. Our mid-semester break happens the week leading up to July 1st. I'm going to have a little barbecue, right? Hopefully there's going to be some good weather and I can calm down and there'll be less red nosing happening, okay?
Or more.
Or maybe more. You never know, right? But something that's going to just calm us down, right? No rain, no bad weather, bad smells, and everything else that's been going on over the last couple of weeks. And we can just calm down and then we'll get back together, the week of July 3rd, if I'm not wrong, right? And then we'll be golden. We'll be ready to go into the second half of the semester with more data management. That's what's happening next week and the week after. On that, then you know that the assignment 2 is due this weekend, right? And I did it on purpose to get it due this weekend because this way it won't overlap with your assignment, your midterm assignment, which is what you're going to get. Now, assignments are funny because I give you leeway. like, enough leeway, like I said last time, to hang yourself with, right? Which is, it's due on Sunday, but you could hand it in late to Wednesday, with a mark loss. Every time I give you an assignment, then you have a couple of days just in case something goes wrong or whatever for an assignment, and it's usually worth small marks, like you see here, 5%, right? Is what it's going to be due, the assignment 2, 5%. So if you don't get it done on time by Wednesday, the maximum you can lose is 5%. But for exams, it's 20%. It's like, if an assignment was a knife, an exam would be a sword, all right? And it can really cut you. So please, guys, take it seriously, plan accordingly, and get it done. Okay, get it done. Don't skip on this thing. It's not like you can afford to do it. Remember that passing grade for this course and all MDEV courses is 60%, right? You cannot pass the 50%. So that means you have to do a little bit more effort. If you target everything for a 50% mark, like all your assignments, you will fail, right? Like this is just not going to happen, right? So make sure you target for higher than 60. And I mean that in terms of your time, allocation, effort, all that stuff. Any questions around in-class exercise 6, assignment 2, the exam, midterm test. We should call it a midterm test for next week, right? Any questions? My red nose, rain that's happening right now, snow, I don't know what the hell is going to happen pretty soon next week, right? Let's talk about app security a little bit then. If we're done talking about the administration part, which I find is always the most boring, right? Let's talk about the more, kind of interesting stuff, which is app security. And I say an intro to app security because this isn't a security course, right? It's not. And so I can't talk to it like as if it's a security course. If I did, we could spend, 3-4 weeks on just security. I mean, realistically, just on this security. We don't got 3 weeks. We got 3 slides, right? And this is how it's going to go. So first of all, let's talk about authentication. Whenever you're asked on an interview what the difference is between authentication and authorization, what are you going to say? What are you going to say on an interview? Yeah, I'm asking you, since you're right here in front of me, pretty like you are. Authentication versus authorization, what would you do? What would you say the difference is? Yeah, I'm asking you. Guess. Worst case, it's wrong. It doesn't matter. It's a safe environment. I'm not going to judge you, truly. So what is it? What's the difference in authentication and authorization? In your own words. You don't know? Hitesh, authentication versus authorization.
According to me, authentication is like when you get credentials.
Uh-huh.
And that can be of any sort, like you want to password or something.
Yeah.
Authorization is giving permission. It doesn't have to be like, it takes that into consideration that you are that person, but so like if somebody's trying to access something and I have an email associated with that, I can get an email on that for authorizing that login.
Yeah.
But in authentication, it verifies for me as well.
Okay, I like it. Kosisachukwu, simplify what Hitesh said.
Yeah, so in my opinion, it's also similar. Authentication is the process whereby a user is verified to know that they're actually who they say they are.
Yeah.
And authorization is kind of like allowing access to certain things, so verifying what they have access to, basically.
Okay, good. So let's break down even further than that. Authentication, who are you? Authorization, what can you do? That's it. All right? If someone was going to ask you that question, that's the difference. And people get freaked out about that. They're like, I got authorization. No, you got authentication. You've been authenticated, which means I know who you are. It's identity we're talking about. I can kind of verify your identity. This is who you are. And we can use a lot of different methods in reality nowadays to verify your identity, right? One of them is username and password, which is what you know, right? And now we're going to talk about multi-factor authentication. Multi-factor authentication, all of you should be involved with multi-factor authentication. Anything that's important should include multi-factor authentication. I just wrote a MPN module, multi-factor authentication. I don't want anyone to crack that, right? And somehow, call it that it's theirs or delete it or something like that, right? So the way we do multi-factor authentication is what you know, right? Maybe something you have, an authenticator app, right? That gives you a random number. We used to have these little physical things back in the day called an RSA ID, you probably say. Yeah, I used to have it too, and it just used to cycle and it used to last about a year, and they'd replace it, give you another one, right? Physical, an actual physical device. And then it became an authenticator app, which is really, kind of convenient on your phone, and I have many, like 5. I don't know why we have 5 authenticator apps, because some apps only, respond to some authenticator apps, but not others. I don't know, who knows why, right? So that's what you have. And the other one is who you are. Biometric authentication, things like eye scan, fingerprint reader, facial scan, all those kind of things. That's who you are. That's a third level of biometric, multi-factor authentication. And then it's where you are, like as in a physical location. You can only authenticate when you're at school, at work, on a particular IP address, as an example. And the last one would be something like when you are. You can only authenticate at this particular hour, at this particular place, using your biometric signs and username and password and your other kind of special ID. All these things, multi-factor authentication, is becoming super important because there are a lot of thieves out there, people that are looking to break into your data, your personal information, and take over your identity. Everything from the voice that you have, actually like hello, when you answer a phone call randomly and they hang up, they're getting an imprint, a sample of your voice. Enough of those samples, and they can make you say anything, like empty my bank account, right? One of those kind of things. It only takes that. Doing things like what I'm doing, which is, presenting on YouTube, right? I mean, I have enough samples of my voice, everything from laughter to anger to whatever on YouTube that I've done over the years. We're talking about 12 years now. Right, that they could pretty much, make me say that I love Trump or something. I don't know, right? Anything is possible with my voice, right? And I'm telling you, they can steal everything. What was that?
You just gave them that sample.
Right? I just gave them a sample right now. I can say whatever, right? And so the voice is a very important thing. Like actually sampling your voice, who you are, right, is a big thing. And so that's why we need multiple things. Eventually, I think it's going to be a really big deal, guys. Like your persona, the way you look. I mean, literally, they can put your head on any body that they want right now with deep fakes, right? Happens right now with AI. And, even to the point where they can probably frame you for a crime, right? They do something, they, break into the camera system and frame somebody else for it. It's not me, right? Wasn't me, right? And, it can totally happen. So and especially as quantum computing becomes, closer and closer to reality with qubits, and the ability for it to be both on and off at the same time. Just try and wrap your mind around that one. They're talking about how quantum computing is going to kill security, and so that's where blockchain is maybe something that we're going to be using for everything in the future, unbeknownst to us, because we won't have to worry about that. It's just going to happen in the background, hopefully, right? So authentication methods is what we're talking about. And security is super important in apps because we're starting to store almost everything on them, right? We're storing things like, your friends list, images of you, personal images of you, maybe images you don't want to share with anybody else that keep on getting cracked, especially celebrities, right? And that kind of stuff. Important information that you want to store, that you want to remember, like passwords, password managers. People crack into that stuff too. And once they have your password manager, they got everything, right? And a bunch of other stuff that you store on your personal devices. And, last week we had this whole thing about, like we talked about all the new devices from Apple and stuff like that they've announced. And they announced that, we talked about this really briefly as well, this whole, kind of like Vision Pro, when they said that, they're going to authenticate you by your irises, biometric authentication, right? And that even twins will be, differentiated, right? Because they have slightly different irises or whatever. And that's great. But we are storing continuously more and more stuff, and we're being more and more trusting than ever before, right? Like how many people are out there that actually use a VPN when they surf the web? Probably no one, right? And you should. Even now, you should be using a VPN when you're connected to Georgian. And the reason for this is because you never know who's looking at your stuff, right? I'm not saying that I'm looking at it right now, but I mean, you know, you're going through Georgian's Wi-Fi. You don't know, right? And it's jumping from one point to the other. It's just data, right? So realistically, you should always be using your own personal VPN, no matter what you do. But how many people do that? No one does, because we're trusting. We trust. We have a high level of trust for what we do. And the same thing goes when you're using certain apps. Like you do a workout and you have a workout app and you store all your workout data there. You don't know how that company's using your data. You have no idea. It's free. It's not free. They're selling your data to somebody else. They're selling your identity, and that's why you're getting all of a sudden all these like how to lose weight quick apps, you know, kind of, or weight quick information, you know, that kind of stuff. And to me, you know, it's almost like a travesty that this is happening, but none of us do it. And let's talk about a couple more things before we stop talking about this and actually move on to coding, right? I know this is an interesting thing. Again, a little bit off topic in our course. But one thing is this idea of the user experience, right? User experience to me is one of the biggest things to balance, right? It's how secure something is versus how usable it is, right? I can make something really super secure. Yeah, you got to use some kind of authenticator. You got to be, you know, you got to use your biometric. You got to be in a certain location. You got to be in a certain time.
Platform is the worst for
Right?
it too. Like, I don't have as much of a problem, but my fiance who uses it, every time she logs in,
She got to reset her
it asks
password.
her for the two-factor
Oh.
authentication, and it's like that. Don't ask me again for 30 days. For whatever reason, it seems it doesn't flag properly on her account,
Who knows?
and so it's like. But we also are making sure that, like, you know, who has this and whose phone number does it go to and which email, and trying to keep all that
Right.
straight. It's such a nightmare. But then it's also like, yeah, but it's you can't get in, nobody else can either,
You hope.
right?
And the thing is, that's the problem. You want to kind of balance security, how secure you feel, how safe you feel. When I think about security, when I think about trust, I'm taking a course on trust. Remember I was telling you, I have to be nice to my professor because, you know, it's hard to be a professor and learn from another professor. You know, professors are like the worst students, okay, honestly, because we're always judgy, right? And anyways, we're taking this course on trust, which is a really cool thing. And they talk about this, this week we're talking about the a trust framework where we're thinking about, you know, kind of a spectrum. Trust is a spectrum, right? Just like other things now, right? -1 to 1, magic numbers from computer scientists, right? -1, you absolutely don't trust someone, right? 1, you absolutely trust someone. And then there's 0. And then when I saw 0, I was like, what does that mean, right? 0 is like mistrust, where you kind of, it's not quite don't trust them, and it's not like you trust them. And there's going to be a level of mistrust where before you get to this threshold, some kind of threshold, a cooperation threshold is what it's called, when you move your trust up the scale closer and closer to 1 until you can trust someone or a system or whatever, an operating system, you know, a peer-to-peer network, whatever it's going to be. So this is the idea. So how much, you know, user experience is kind of like that when it comes to me, like on a scale of -1 to 1, right? Where you have complete terrible user experience, but in like the most secure system you can possibly think of. Example, nuclear codes, all right? I definitely don't want a good user experience with nuclear codes. It should be a terrible user experience, right? It should be the worst user experience I've ever seen in my life. I should be like sprayed, you know, like whatever. I should not have access to nuclear codes very easily. No one should, right? So really bad nuclear experience, you know, let's call it the nuclear experience, right? That's what it should be. It should be a terrible experience because it's super sensitive information that's going to kill people, right? And then on the other hand, you know, the other thing I always say to myself is, whoever trusts 100%? You don't even trust yourself these days. Come on, guys, right? With some stuff. So I even think like a 1 from a -1 to 1 on a trust scale is impossible, right? There is no 1. 1 is infinite, right, for me. And in many ways, you know, that's not true about security, right? For security, somehow, we absolutely trust certain things, like Apple. We absolutely trust if I use my Apple phone and if I do like, you know, Find My, that's okay and no one else is looking, right? That's wrong, guys. You know, we should start thinking about those a little bit more, and we don't. Why? Because of the user experience. Apple is selling you always the user experience. The user experience is more important to you than almost anything else. Even though they tell you that they're not going to store any information, you really don't know. And one of the things that I also want to talk about, last thing I'm going to talk about security and trust in general, which is related, which is every single time they update their iOS version, now they're moving from 16 to 17, is it not, right? Do you really trust that it's, your phone is slowing down and your battery's not working? Or is it something that they're doing? I always have this conspiracy theory in the back of my head saying my iPhone 14 Pro Max, right, is just not going to work as well next year or the year after. And it's nothing to do with me, right? So, or antivirus programs. Do we really have that many viruses, or is McAfee really trying just to, kill us with viruses, right? Is McAfee making the viruses or Norton? And is that the reason why we use them? And that's why I always say, you don't really need virus protection programs unless you go to bad sites. Why would you need them unless you're doing something bad, right? And people do stuff that's bad, right? And that's just the way it is. All right, so that's it for app security. So we have to think about those 4 or 5 different, dimensions of app security. One thing that we care about here when it comes to making iOS applications and so on is we're going to take the login and password, username and password strategy. There's different strategies. And actually we talked about that here in one of the previous slide, which is the other thing to do is something called OAuth, which is a third-party strategy. You guys know about OAuth, right? Jason, you know about OAuth? Do you know what OAuth is? Right? OAuth is a third-party trust scenario, right? So, I trust Hitesh, right? And Hitesh trusts Eric, and so therefore I trust Eric. It's like when you introduce a friend of yours to a friend of a friend, suddenly we'll trust, or you make a referral. I have a plumber who's really great. I trust my plumber because he does a great job, so I refer my plumber to you, and then you trust him somehow, right? Even though he might screw you up and charge you thousands, right? But I trust him, and you trust me. You must trust the plumber, right? So this third-party trust scenarios was happening with, single sign-on and social media sign-on, like Google or Microsoft or LinkedIn or whatever. We have this large AAA security system that's involved, right? We hope Microsoft, if they're putting together a security system, we hope it's going to be stronger than what you and I can put together. So obviously, if Microsoft trusts me, well, you should trust me too, right? But Microsoft and Google and Amazon and a bunch of those sites have all been broken into, right? In fact, maybe they get attacked more than we would, right? Yeah.
But I think OAuth is popular and because it provides that smooth user experience, and that's the best selling point that I personally think about any website. Yeah. I don't have to make their own login. I can just change.
You trust that you're going to do it.
Experience is smooth, I don't
right? You trust. Like GitHub, right? GitHub asked me for authorization if Microsoft can use my GitHub account or whatever. Or that, here's a new one, NPM, the NPM registry can use my GitHub account. Or, ChatGPT can use my Google account or whatever so they can authenticate me. I trust all these things to happen, right? Because if I don't, I'm going to have a bad user experience if I say no, right? So single sign-on in social media is very common in applications when we sign up, right? But for us, because this is not a security course, and I've talked about as much, even more than I should have, all right, in terms of security, is we're going to use username and password, okay? One thing about username and password, there's 2 things we have to think about, and one of those things is login state. And, are you logged in or not? Okay, are you logged in or not? How do I take? A lot of times we talk about this as our session. We kind of have a secure session. A session in my mind is always some kind of meeting that takes place between the user and the app, right? We have task time, whatever you want to call it. And we spend that task time doing something, right? Even if it's something fun. And what happens when you navigate away from your app? You close your app or you answer a phone call or something else and the app goes into the background. Should you still have the session when it comes back? Should you still be logged in is the question. And if it's not an app that has super secure information about you, example, banking, right? Your banking app, if you navigate away for like 10 minutes, it's closed. You have to log in again, and rightly so. It should be a bad user experience when it comes to maintaining your security. As well, I recommend at least two-factor authentication. You don't need it. Even now, with most banking apps, you can do just like really nothing if you really want to, but you're really being very trusting in this world, right? So have multi-factor authentication for sure. And make sure the banking app asks you all kinds of questions if you forget your password, like crazy amounts, like, you know, that you shouldn't do it, because then you're going to lose your money. I just watched this Arnold documentary. I don't know, I'm into Arnold Schwarzenegger. He was always a big, kind of role model for me until he did the things that he did, like every celebrity, right? And, one of the things he says is, he was always told that you have to exercise your mind as well as your body, right? Arnold was all about the body, right? And then, but he says exercise your mind because, if you don't exercise your mind, someone can, steal everything from you. They can, take everything away from you, but at least you still have your mind, is what he said. And so it's the same thing with me when it comes to this, which is, make sure you do your due diligence is what I'm telling you when it comes to certain things. And one thing is, it's important to track your login state when it comes to apps. So you navigate away from your app, you have to decide when you make your app, is it important for you to give yourself a timeout, start counting when you're navigating away, and should I lock my app and log the user out, right? Should you do that? And I've given you some code examples that we're not going to use today, and I want just as a talking point, we can do stuff like this on the web. Whenever we're on the web, whenever we have sessions, where are sessions stored? Do you guys know? I'm making a web app. Where are sessions stored on the web? Cookies, you said? Cookies are bad. What's another way of storing sessions? Right? There's actually session storage.
Yeah.
Right? And there's also local storage. Those are like the three things: cookies, local storage, session storage. It's a very common way of storing things on the web. So that's how we use sessions. We also use tokens. Tokens are another way to keep secure. And token storage, tokens, we use a lot to pass around tokens to kind of say things like, yes, it's me, yes, it's me, yes, it's me, over and over again until you time out, and then you have to log in again, okay? So here, one of the most common ways of doing it is using, on iOS, user defaults to store your am I logged in, or shared preferences on Android, am I logged in? You store that information, a Boolean, I'm logged in or I'm not logged in, okay? And you can make it so that from a context perspective, it's private. So no one can read that I'm logged in or I'm not logged in, okay? On both systems, by the way, okay? And that's one strategy. And the other way to do it, of course, is to have a timer. This is the one for iOS that I would probably use. I might use the notification center as a framework, right? I navigate away, and the notification center informs me through an observer. I set up almost like an event handler, right? That basically says, oh, he navigated away from the application. I'm using notification to instantly trigger a timer, right? And the timer is going to basically start counting down, a countdown timer. And I have 10 minutes, 5 minutes, 30 minutes, whatever your sensitivity of your app is, that should be the context of the time, right? And then after the time has elapsed, you're logged out. It changes the value in your local storage, in this case, shared preferences or user prefs, whatever it's going to be. It modifies that value so it's false. You're not logged in anymore. And then when you navigate back to the app, you're taken to the login screen again, okay, from the very beginning. Okay, so it's both. I've just given you both references for iOS and Android. On Android, it's called Alarm Manager, right? The Alarm Manager as well as the broadcast receiver. And they use something called a countdown timer, which is exactly the same thing. Again, you can accomplish it on both platforms, and of course they would have these things because they have the same security concerns, okay, on both platforms, on iOS and Android. So remember these things. If ever you're asked to put together a secure app, it doesn't matter, username and password, whatever, it should time out when it goes back to the background screen, unless it's not important. And you're just signing in because, well, you want to gather user information. Like, for example, your free workout app that you might be using right now, or free whatever the hell app that you're using. it's still, you have to create maybe you have to register an email, and it's just free to use, right? But they're doing something with your data, right? Or they're verifying that you're actually a person, that you're not a bot or something like that, right? So those kind of things that stay open all the time, that you're always logged in. Microsoft does that with their, their Game Pass, right? You're logged in all the time. And, or even if it's something like Steam or Netflix, when you log in once, you're logged in all the time. And occasionally, it logs you off. Do you ever notice that on some of your devices? You have to log in again, like they don't even know who you are, right? Or Prime, or whatever. All of them do it. They log you off after a time. And it's a security concern, because it could be like some random users using Netflix or whatever, okay? And so that's part of what we want to do. We always want to log somebody off. One more thing I want to talk about when it comes, last thing that I'm going to talk about, I swear. If you're using a wearable device, okay, like a watch, and, I don't know if you've ever used that, and you put on your watch, and if you don't, if you're not connected to your phone, and you look at your watch or whatever, it's going to ask you to log in, right? Or, let's suppose you're using VR. Here's one that's big, right? You're using your MetaQuest 2, which used to be called your Oculus Quest, right? And now MetaQuest 3 and MetaQuest Pro is out there. And you put it on your face. Does it ever ask you to log in? No is the answer. You might log in once and never again. And nowadays, with VR the way it is with security, you could have access to bank accounts. You could have access to whatever with your headset, and it doesn't know who you are. And that's why Apple introduced that whole thing where they can detect who you are with your eyes. Okay, questions or comments around anything I talked about in terms of authentication versus authorization? You guys should know what that means. Different authentication methods. We're going to be using username and password. That's a strategy we're going to be using, right? And what happens when you navigate away from your app? Because your app, remember, always can be interrupted by your phone call, right? 99% of the time. Phone call comes in, you're playing a game, you're not in that app anymore, you're doing something else. Should you log off? Should it log you off, right? And again, in the case of a banking app, the answer is yes, right? But in the case of some other apps, maybe no. Maybe not until 30 minutes have elapsed or whatever, or maybe never, depending on your use case. Okay? We're going to move into the actual coding part, and I want to start with the question I had last week, which was, I want to make a copy of my application, my mobile app, right, so I can use it. And I'm telling you this because maybe next week, hint, hint, I may give you something to start with, and I'm going to say, make a copy of it and rename it to this, right? And how do you do that? Right, so I'm going to talk about how to do that first. And so on this, since we're recording, let's get into my remote session at home, which I'm going to teleport in there again now. So you should be on your MacBook Pro or whatever, a likeness of a Mac that you have in front of you. Hopefully it's a real Mac, which is cool. How you like your Mac now? Good? You happy with your Mac? Yes? Eric's shaking his head. I hate my Mac. I hate my Mac. I hate my Mac. Right? He's not happy with his Mac.
But I'm here.
I know. I'm happy that you're here. And let's talk about this, what I want to do. And I just want to full screen it here. And we'll just work exclusively on the iOS for now and on Mac OS. I'm just going to put this way over here. All right. So. Let's start with making a copy of last week. So last week, you may have done this as well. I have on my desktop an app that's not working. Don't tell me that I'm losing. This is the thing I'm always afraid of, eh? If like suddenly my my computer here and remote stops working one day, right? It's always a fear of mine. Nah, I just do it locally. I'll do it Android instead of iOS. We'll flip the script kind of thing and just do Android instead of iOS and say just do iOS on your own, But let's go into what we did last week. So last week, oh yeah, it's really slowing down. Last week, what we did was we talked about, come on. It's not responding. There it is. So there we go. So we had ICE 5, and I said, let's copy this. Oh yeah, every click is happening today. ICE 5, and I want to paste it, right? I want to paste my item, and it's going to make ICE 6, right? And I said to you guys, you do this, bad things can happen to good people. And we just copied ICE 4 last week, but today I can't do that because I have a need. I have a need with you guys, which is coming up next week, right? I'm going to ask you guys to rename stuff and make it your own, and so I have a need, and I have to get this done. So here we go. And so this takes some time up from our day, but it's part of our learnings for today, all right? If we can get this done. So when we look at the previous thing, because my previous session was based on ICE 4, that's what we had before, I have to rename things. So we start actually at renaming, if I go back out one level, right? So again, so here's our containing folder. Inside the containing folder, you're gonna see some stuff. And one of this stuff that we're gonna see is the XC or Xcode proj file, this one, okay? This is where we're gonna start today. So first thing we change. So what I want you to do is I want you to right click and I want you to open with, and I want you to open it with Visual Studio Code, right? So another editor. And when my machine responds, it should open up Visual Studio Code, right? Should. And you're gonna see that that one file is actually a folder, okay? That's the first thing. So the first thing you do is go to your Xcode project, and then let's start looking at project PBX proj, okay? And you're going to see that there are some stuff in here that looks like JSON data, okay? This is some JSON data that you see here, okay? And if you look through, there's going to be some comments that say ICE 4. So one thing you can do with every file that we're going to use is just going to go to, you're going to go to edit, and you're going to go to replace, right, on this file, and you're going to replace ICE 4, here, ICE, come on, Tom. Oh, the delay, woohoo! Oh yeah, we're talking now. ICE 4, and we're going to replace it with ICE 6. Okay, so do that with me. ICE, come on. I probably typed it in twice. Yep, I did. It's going to be undoable today. Unworkable, actually. ICE 6, okay? And then you're going to click Replace All, this one, which is 29 replacements. You're not going to tell what that does. You can't tell what that does, but you want to save that file, so please file save. That's the first file we're going to deal with. I know it's a little tedious, but afterwards, at least, everything will be workable, okay? Next, that's the first thing. So the project PBX proj file. Okay, let's open up this little thing here and let's look at some of these other files here, okay? There's some files you will not be able to modify, all right? Like, for example, or it doesn't make any difference. Like, for example, this file clearly doesn't make any difference. There's nothing to do with in-class exercise, anything, right? And the same thing goes with your plist file. Your plist file, there is something, but it's only one thing, and it's an important thing. Make sure you change this to in-class, just click the button and change it to in-class exercise 6. And we're going to do that for all of them, okay? And last but not least, inside of this same folder, you're going to have a couple of additional pieces of data here, right? So you have some Swift, Swift PM. And if this actually lets me do my thing. Come on. Come on, little pokey. There we go. So I have this one, which is not available to open, so don't worry about that. We also have this one, which is the workspace. We don't care about that. We have this one, which is the plists. There's nothing really in there that tells us anything, right? So nothing in there, so to find inside there. We can also open up this Swift configuration file, which seems to be empty, an empty folder. And so now we've done everything we need to do, and let's make sure we save all. So again, any changes we made, like for example to this plist, you have to save. So file, save. And why am I doing this? Because it's not the only way, but it's the best way that I found out, okay? Because it actually goes into the file system level, and I mean, a project is just made of files. So if you go in there, it's all going to look beautiful. All right, that's the first thing. So now that we've done this part, make sure you close off all your editors, and let's get back to the file system. So what we did was we modified the Xcode proj file. Okay, that's what we did. Next, there is this XC data model file, this one, XC data model. And I want you to take this XC data model and drag it into Visual Studio Code, right? And you're going to see again that the XC data model is actually not just one file, but actually a collection of files. It's actually a folder structure, the XC data model, right? So again, current version, if you click on there, tells you the current version of the file. One day when it actually listens to me. Never. It's super slow today, okay? And notice that it says the string for current version is actually pointing to ICE4, and we want to change this to ICE6 and save the file, okay? And then let's look inside of here, and we can look at contents, and there, my friends, if you look at it, is what do we see here? This is our model. This is our entity. So we actually can look at our entity at this level. We're going to change our, by the way, we're going to change our float to double, because that promoted a problem for us last week that we're going to fix this week. Because float, when it comes to getting our data, we're going to have to do the whole data thing again. Float is bad because it should actually, when we're reading a JSON file, it should be a double, which we're going to see. So here, there's nothing to change because there's nothing to do with the project, right? However, one thing I caution you is to always look across to make sure there's nothing that talks about ICE4 or anything else, okay? One thing is that we have to change the name of the folder. So the folder name is ICE4, so we should really change it to ICE6 if we can. So again, right click, and we want to rename. And this thing that says ICE4, you should change to ICE6. That's important to do, okay? That folder itself, that actually folder within the folder, we should change to ICE6. In fact, even the containing folder, right, which is one level up, which we're going to do in a second, we should also change that to ICE6. And we're going to do that by going and doing that in the operating system. So in the operating system, I'm just going to close down Visual Studio Code here one day. And it feels like closing. Come on. There you go. And in here, make sure you change the name of your XC data model itself to ICE6. And also, your containing folder should also be ICE6, way up here. ICE6. And you're going to say, wow, there's a lot of little changes, Tom. I'm going slow, and my system is making me go slow, right? And I'm okay with that. I'm okay with that. Assets, XC assets. If we had anything in that folder, which we do not, right, then you'd want to look there and make sure that there's nothing in this folder here, assets, XC assets, that has anything to do with, ICE6. And so again, or ICE4. So you can look at these files here and check. Nothing, we haven't done anything with that, with accent colors or whatever. Baseproj.lproj. All right, base.lproj. Let's look at that up. Let's look that up. So there's the launch screen storyboard and the main storyboard, and I'm telling you there's probably nothing in there. There are some other areas that we're going to look at, but we're going to look at them in Xcode now, okay? So those are the changes that we have to make, okay? So and again, this thing here should be renamed to ICE6, not ICE4. So make sure that that is named, somehow it didn't change, appropriately, okay? Everything should be ICE6. Okay, I know I've gone crazy here with this explanation, but I did it just to make sure you guys are clear. All right, now we can swim back up one level, and you can see that we have ICE6, and I want to open it up with Xcode. So I'm going to go back to Xcode, and I'm going to open a project or file, and I'm going to navigate to where my files are. This is my test project, so I tested all this out before today. One day when it feels like doing it. Come on. And I'm going to go back to desktop, and we're going to look at this. No, how about try that again? Desktop, and we're going to look at ICEs, and we're going to look at ICE6. I'm going to click open, and what it's going to do is should say ICE6 at the top now, and there should be, and this is the key, No errors. Give it a second to compute. One thing I also want you to do is I want you to go to product, and I want you to clean build folder. Please do a clean build folder. This will remove anything like build data that happens to be stored somewhere else. Okay, so no more build data. Okay. And going back to our folder, you should see that now you see your project and it's been renamed properly. Okay. Now, again, there's many other ways to do the same thing. This is the most meticulous way. Okay. But I wanted to show you this because I don't think you can go as wrong. I'm biting my lip saying that right now. Okay. I am. Because whenever I say that, there's always things that can go wrong. One thing that we know is in the app delegate, let's go to the app delegate, please. We know that in the app delegate, and this killed me when I first did this transfer, I was like, how come this is not working? I changed everything. It can't possibly go wrong. Well, if you look in the app delegate, there is a reference to ICE4, right? Isn't there?
Yeah.
If
Persistent.
So we need to change that so it says the right thing. So make sure that,
Should be online in the 40s.
I'm trying. There we go. Here it is. It's right here. And under ICE4, we want to change this to ICE6. Please do that. Yes.
I have a question. So, like, we made the ICE4 project, we did something to it. Okay. Now we're making a copy of it.
We made a copy. Yes.
Yeah. So, I don't know if it will work, but why can't we just make a scratch project, say I6, put what we need from the ICE4 to the I6? That's one approach. I don't know if that works.
That's definitely an approach. And then you'd have to recreate the data model manually yourself, right? Which could be very long, right? Like big, right? And I've done it in that way before, and somehow I get weird, wanky errors, like in your storyboard sometimes. Whatever, right? This way, everything has been renamed. It doesn't matter, right? Because it's just files. You can do the same thing with Android, by the way. If you went meticulously through Android and did what I just did, similar things, it would just be a brand new project again, right? So when I ask you to rename, it may require, if you want to do it your way and you make it work, I'm good, all right?
Second part,
Yeah.
not to just like search in the whole folder ICE4 and just replace it with I6.
You could, if you trusted Apple to do that kind of wonderful work for you. Huh?
With the VS Code.
Yes, we could do that with VS Code. I caution you because sometimes search and replace functionality sometimes destroys and replaces. You know, search and destroy as opposed to search and replace. Just be careful, is all I'm saying. And especially when, make a copy first, always. Don't ever do it on your original, because once you do it on your original, it's dead, unless you've stored it on, and hopefully we've all have, stored it on GitHub, right? So worst case, if I messed up, I can always revert.
It works well when it's like I6 should be fine. But if you have A1, there's A1 lots of places that aren't necessarily referring to that, right?
Yeah, that's why I made it I6. I6 is good. You're right. I6 could work. Okay, here's something I want to do now. I don't want to test it yet. I want to fix it. So remember that in the app delegate, we had a way of seeding our data. We have a data seeder application, a little program. And the data seeder program basically said that when we data seed, we want to make it floats, right? Yep.
I just have a question. Does the double work the way that we have it put in? Because I did it a different way for A2 to fix the same problem.
Okay, what way did you do it?
I just told it that it was going to get it as a string, made it a string,
And then converted it.
and then parsed it
Yeah, that's
as well.
fine too. That'll work fine. I'm just going to make it a double so it converts it directly. That's all. I'm going to show you that one.
I made it a double and it worked for me.
Yeah, making it double works for me too. And let me explain how this works. So first, I'm going to go into the XC data model, and let's take a look and see what we got. Do we have everything? And this is what the beautiful thing is about what I did. We retained the data model. If I did something like start from scratch, sometimes what happens is, especially if my data model is very complex, holy crap, I can make a lot of mistakes, right? And it takes a long time for me to put together this. There's no way that's quick and easy to do it. I would love for there to be like some kind of XML or something else that, well, you saw it, it's there, but something that's easy for us to do within Xcode, and there isn't. Xcode doesn't give you that for whatever reason, right? So anyway, so this is what I'm looking at. And what I want to do is I want to modify the float up here where it says critics rating and changes to double.
What's the difference between a double and decimal?
So a decimal is money.
Okay, so
Yeah,
it's
money
just
accuracy.
two.
Right, yeah. And a double is double precision, right? And a float is single precision. So whenever we think about a float in my language, when I think about C++, I always think about a single. So float is like a single, double is a double precision, and decimal is specific for money, right? Which is extra things, formatting and so on. All right, so now that we've done this, we've changed this, our entity movie from a float to a double. That means our data seeder is going to start having issues. It's going to start coughing blood. All right, it's going to say, no, I don't know what you're trying to do here converting, like right now. See that? And so I'm going to say, of course, I can't assign a float to a double, and so we're just going to say double here, and that'll solve that problem. As well, in our add edit view controller, right? Add edit view, if you remember, also did that conversion down here as well. So if you scroll down, there's going to be an area where in the add edit view, we're converting to a float. We're going to convert this to a double, right? And there might be one more place because we're duplicating, and I talked about how bad this was. We need to also do this as a double, okay? So those are the places that we've changed, and now I'm ready to test that it doesn't break anything. We're going to have zero data at this point, okay? Because when we copy stuff, this is an interesting thing, from one application to the other, and we rename our data file, which is the XC data model, our data connection to our SQLite database somehow, right, although it's the same data, is lost, right? So let's try this out. So if I run this thing now, we should have functionality. It should not break. It should run. I'm saying should a lot because I did it at home, but sometimes when you try things at home, they don't work when you're in the middle of things. And so now what we should do is get an empty interface here and no data. And somehow we got data. Do you know why I got data? Because I already did this today. And I called it the exact same name, which is ICE6. The naming is important, right? So how do you do the reseeding? Well, I provided you with a gist. And let me talk about this. First of all, what if I wanted to get rid of my data, right? That's something you may want to do. We never talked about this. So let's do it. Let's get rid of our data. So in the dataseeder.swift file, I'm going to add another file. And for this, let's go and get my gist I gave you, right? So if I go to github.com one day when it feels like it, come on. If I go to github.com, come on, little pokey. github.com. And when I go there and I want to look at my gists, so if I go to me, right, and I look at my gists, that's how I do it, you're going to see a series of things that we want to talk about. So there's my updated data seeder that I've shared with you on Blackboard. So please go there and see that. The only difference between the data seeder that I gave you before and this one today is this other new function called delete all data. I kind of created this one. And I did this because we need to delete all of our data. And it's almost worth like just doing it again. I'm just going to grab all this. This is my function, copy it. And come on, little pokey. Oh, it's chugging today. Ooh, it's going to be a slow session today. Copy. And then I'm going to go back to, that's okay, you guys can catch up today. I'm not going to be as fast, that's for sure. And underneath this one, I'm just going to paste. And now it says delete all data. There's delete all data, right? So delete all data, what it's going to do is going to go through your persistent data store. Now, you have to target the right target. I've made it already I6 here. You have to specify what data store you're targeting, okay? And let me show you what this looks like. I'm going to go into my app delegate, And where we had that seed data, I'm going to put in delete all data. So let's just uncomment that, delete all data. That's the one. It's a global function. And if I run this now, delete all data, then you should see that my data has been removed. There it is, right? Sometimes we need to do this because we want to verify that our data seeders are working properly with what we've made. And that's why I'm doing it. Remember, it's better to fail first and then figure out that things are wrong before you try and fix them, right? So now that we've deleted all my data, let's put it all back and let's see if we get the right stuff back. So again, deleted all data, going back and reseeding all the data for the first time. Let's run it again and see if we get it back, okay? Now, this is a very methodical way of doing it. See, I got everything back, and it's perfect now. We know that it's good. We see all of it is green. There's no reds or yellows because there's no zeros anymore. I don't have to manually do anything. It does it all for me. It's reading the data in the proper way, okay? And now we have to comment this part out. We don't want to reseed the data twice. So make sure that you comment it out. Once you've seeded the data, it's a one-time thing. You do it for testing. Yes?
You could technically just leave them both running in order, right?
Yeah. If you deleted and seeded, then it would be perfect. It would be, but your data would be like never changing.
Yeah,
Every time you made a
do
change,
it.
you would come back to the app, it'd be gone,
It'll
right?
always
So,
change.
yeah. So that's why we don't want it to do it. All right. So that's good. So now we should be able to run the data again. We should see that it's the same data, right? But it's not going to be, we don't need to seed. So this is the way it is. We should be able to run the app as normal like we did last day. Okay? And now we've done our copy. Let's put this up on GitHub. All right, so again, when it feels like it, my system, chug, chug, chug. And who knows, this could be a number of reasons why this is happening, right? On my home system. It could be, like now, that I got kicked out. Woohoo! Right? And it's a great time to take a break, right? Oh yeah, I love this one, right? And it happens sometimes, right? Sometimes it's a bad connection. Sometimes Georgian College is kicking me out, right? That's just what happens, right? And now you can see it's a much better connection. All right, so what I want to do now is, let's put this up on GitHub, like I said. So what I want to do is, I want to navigate to that folder like we did before. And again, I'm not doing it within Xcode because Xcode is wonky when it comes to that kind of stuff. Actually, I did it wrong. Let's just do that again. Oh, it's working normally again. Yay. I should have just dropped out and tried to connect again. It's like a bad connection with your phone. So, did I speak too soon? I spoke too soon. No. Something's going on. The internet's definitely jumping up there. All right, and I'm going to say something like git add dot, git commit -m, and we'll say added project files for ICE6 and git push. So now you have all my in-class exercise 6 files. And this, my friends, is a great place to take a pause because from now on, we're going to add new stuff, new code for today. And we're going to do new user interfaces as long as my system allows me to, right? It should be pretty good. So let's take a break and like so. So right now we're sitting at 5:12. And let's take 5 minutes, right? Get your water, get your stuff, and come back, and we'll continue. That took a bit of chunk out of my time, so that's why we have to do that.